unlimited drama series.
The sound of Danny's Mercedes purring into our driveway at 2:30 in the morning had become as familiar as my insomnia. I stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching my wife of 8 years stumble out of her car like she'd just finished a marathon instead of what she called her late-night fitness consultation. "Alex?" Her voice carried that particular blend of guilt and irritation that had become her signature tune. "Why are you still up?" I turned to face Danielle Pierce, still stunning at 34. Her blonde hair pulled back in that messy bun that somehow cost her $200 to achieve at the salon. Her yoga pants were pristine, her makeup barely smudged. For someone who claimed to be training clients until midnight, she looked remarkably fresh. "Couldn't sleep," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "How was the session with Mrs. Henderson?" The lie came so easily to her now. "Exhausting. She's really committed to her weight loss goals." Danny kicked off her designer sneakers and padded toward the stairs. "Why do you always need to know where I am, Alex? It's suffocating." There it was. The deflection, the accusation, the way she made me the villain in her story. Classic Danny. I'd been an insurance investigator for 12 years before that, and a journalist before that. I knew when someone was lying. The tells were all there. The way she avoided eye contact, how she touched her neck when she spoke, the defensive posture. "You're right," I said, surprising her. I was being controlling. She paused on the third step, turning to look at me with suspicion. "What?" I said, "You're right, I'm sorry." I smiled, the kind of smile that had charmed her when we first met at that coffee shop downtown. "I trust you completely." The confusion in her eyes was almost comical. This wasn't the script she'd prepared for. No fight, no accusations, no drama to justify whatever she was really doing during those late-night disappearances. "Oh, okay, good." She continued up the stairs, but I could feel her uncertainty lingering in the air like expensive perfume. I finished my coffee and went to bed, lying next to my wife as she pretended to sleep. But I was done pretending. Done being the nice guy who asked polite questions and accepted obvious lies. Done being Alex Pierce, the understanding husband who never made waves. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Instead of heading to my office at Hartwell Insurance, I drove to the Millbrook Travel Agency and booked a flight to Miami. Cash. No credit card trail, no shared accounts, just me, a beach, and 2 days of complete radio silence. I left Thursday morning while Danny was at her studio, fit and fabulous. The boutique fitness center she'd opened 3 years ago with money from her trust fund. I didn't leave a note, didn't send a text. For the first time in 8 years of marriage, I simply vanished. My phone started buzzing before I even reached Albany. By the time I landed in Miami, I had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from my loving wife, who apparently didn't need to know where I was every second of the day. The messages started concerned. "Hey, where are you? Your office said you called in sick." Then worried. "Alex, please call me back. I'm getting scared." Then angry. "This is ridiculous. Call me now." Finally desperate. "Please, Alex. I'm sorry about what I said. Just let me know you're okay." I spent Friday on South Beach, sending her a single selfie. Me in sunglasses, palm trees in the background, cocktail in hand. The caption read, "Promotion came through, celebrating in style." Saturday brought another selfie from my hotel balcony overlooking the ocean. "Thinking about our future," I wrote. I returned Sunday evening to find Danny pacing our living room like a caged animal. Her face was blotchy from crying, her usually perfect hair a mess. She launched herself at me the moment I walked through the door. "Where the hell were you?" she screamed, pounding her fists against my chest. "I thought you were dead." "I called hospitals, Alex. Hospitals." I set down my suitcase calmly, noting how she didn't ask about the promotion I'd mentioned. I needed some space to think. Think about what? About us. About our marriage. About whether I want to keep living like this. I walked past her to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and grabbed a beer. "I've made a decision." Her face went white. "What kind of decision?" "I'm taking a position with the Miami branch. Better pay, better opportunities. I'll be moving down there next month." "What about me?" I looked at her for a long moment, This woman who'd been lying to me for months, who'd made me feel crazy for asking reasonable questions about her whereabouts. What about you, Danny? I'm your wife. Are you? I took a long drink of my beer. Because wives usually tell their husbands the truth. The explosion was spectacular. She screamed, threw a coffee mug that shattered against the wall, called me every name in the book. But I just stood there, calm as a lake before a storm, watching her reveal her true self. When she finally exhausted herself, I spoke quietly. I'll be staying at the Hampton Inn until I find an apartment in Miami. You can have the house. Alex, wait! But I was already walking toward the door, suitcase in hand. Oh, and Danny? Next time you want to know where someone is every second of the day, maybe you should start with yourself. I left her standing in our kitchen, surrounded by the pieces of the mug she'd thrown, finally understanding that the nice guy she'd been taking advantage of was gone forever. Marty's Tavern hadn't changed in the 15 years I'd been drinking there. Same sticky floors, same neon beer signs, same smell of fried food and broken dreams. It was exactly what I needed after 3 days at the Hampton Inn, watching cable TV, and planning my next move. Well, look what the cat dragged in, Marty called from behind the bar. Martin O'Sullivan had been my friend since college, a former cop turned bar owner who knew everyone's business in our little city of Millbrook. Heard you and the missus are having some troubles. I slid onto my usual stool. News travels fast. Faster when your wife's been calling every mutual friend we have, looking for you. He poured me a whiskey without asking. She seemed pretty shook up. I'm sure she did. I sipped the whiskey, feeling it burn away some of the anger that had been building for months. What else is the gossip mill saying? Marty glanced around the nearly empty bar, then leaned closer. You really want to know? Hit me. Word is she's been spending a lot of time at that fancy car place on Elm Street. Valente Auto Spa. You know, the one owned by that pretty boy who thinks he's God's gift to women. Eric Valente. I knew him by reputation. Former high school quarterback, never left town. Made decent money detailing luxury cars for rich folks who drove up from the city. The kind of guy who wore tight t-shirts to show off muscles he'd built in high school and maintained through sheer vanity. Define a lot of time, I said. Mrs. Glick was walking her dog Tuesday night around 11. Saw Danny's Mercedes parked behind the shop. Lights were on in the office. Marty refilled my glass. Could be innocent. Could be, but probably isn't. I nodded, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Thanks for the heads up. Alex? Marty's voice turned serious. Whatever you're thinking, be careful. That Valente kid has connections. His uncle runs numbers for some unsavory types up in Albany. I'm not planning to do anything stupid. Good. Because the smart play here is to get yourself a good lawyer and take her for everything she's worth. I finished my whiskey and left a 20 on the bar. Who says I'm not? The next morning, I visited Radio Shack and purchased a small GPS tracking device, the kind insurance companies use to monitor high-risk drivers. Perfectly legal to install on a vehicle I co-owned. I waited until Danny left for her studio, then spent 5 minutes under her Mercedes, attaching the device to the undercarriage. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Can we please talk? I miss you. I typed back, busy today, maybe later. The GPS tracker came with an app that showed real-time location data. I spent the rest of the day at my office, catching up on case files and watching the little blue dot that represented my wife's car. She went to the grocery store, stopped at the bank, visited her friend Carly's house for 2 hours, then returned to the studio. Normal Tuesday activities for a woman running a fitness business. But Wednesday was different. The blue dot left the studio at 9 p.m., drove straight to Elm Street, and parked behind Valente Auto Spa. It stayed there until 1:15 a.m. Thursday. Same pattern. Friday. The dot didn't move from the auto shop until 2 a.m. I sat in my hotel room, staring at the tracking data on my phone, feeling something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. That would have required me to still love her. It was something else, something calculating and patient, like the feeling I got when I was closing in on an insurance fraud case. Saturday morning, I drove past Valente Auto Spa. It was closed, but I could see Eric's prized possession parked in the lot. A restored 1969 Mustang Boss 429, cherry red with racing stripes. He'd won some local car show with it last year. Got his picture in the paper, standing next to it like a proud father. Beautiful car. Shame if something happened to it. I drove to the sporting goods store and bought a Louisville Slugger baseball bat. Ashwood, perfectly balanced. Then I went home to wait. Sunday night, the blue dot appeared at the auto shop, right on schedule. I gave them an hour to get comfortable, then drove over with my new bat. The Mustang sat under a streetlight like it was posing for a magazine cover. I walked around it once, admiring the craftsmanship, the attention to detail, the obvious pride Eric took in maintaining it. Then I took the bat to the windshield. The safety glass spider-webbed beautifully, spreading cracks across the entire surface like a frozen lightning bolt. I pulled out a business card, one of my old ones from my journalism days, and wrote on the back, "Hope you offer glass repair, a satisfied customer." I tucked the card under the windshield wiper and drove home, whistling. My phone rang at 6 a.m. Danny's voice was shrill with panic. "Alex, someone vandalized Eric's car last night, right outside his shop." "That's terrible," I said, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. "Any idea who would do such a thing?" "The police think it might be random vandalism, but Eric thinks—" She trailed off. "Eric thinks what?" "Nothing, never mind. Can we please meet for coffee today? I really need to talk to you." "Sorry, I have appointments all day. Maybe tomorrow." I hung up and smiled. The game had officially begun. The call came Tuesday morning, while I was reviewing insurance claims at my office. Detective Ray Harper, Millbrook PD, wanting to ask me a few questions about the vandalism at Valente Auto Spa. We'd known each other for years. He'd been a rookie cop when I was covering crime for the local paper, and we'd shared more than a few beers at Marty's over the years. "Just routine questions, Alex," he said over the phone. "Eric Valente seems to think you might have had something to do with his car getting damaged." "That's interesting. Why would he think that?" "He says you've been asking around about him. Says your wife mentioned you've been acting strange lately." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice casual. "Ray, my wife and I are having some marital problems. I'm sure you've heard the rumors. As for Eric Valente, I barely know the guy." "So you wouldn't mind coming down to the station for a quick chat?" "Of course not. How's this afternoon?" The Millbrook Police Department occupied a brick building that had been the town hall back when the city actually mattered. Ray met me in the lobby, looking uncomfortable in his wrinkled suit. He'd put on weight since his divorce, and his thinning hair made him look older than his 42 years. "Thanks for coming in," he said, leading me to a small interview room. "Like I said, this is just routine." "No problem. Always happy to help Millbrook's finest." He pulled out a notepad and clicked his pen. "Where were you Sunday night between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m.? "At the Hampton Inn, watching a movie. The Shawshank Redemption was on TNT. Great film. Have you seen it?" "Can anyone verify that?" "The front desk clerk might remember me getting ice around midnight. Vending machine on my floor was broken." I paused. "Ray, do you really think I drove across town to smash some guy's windshield with a baseball bat?" "Did I mention a baseball bat?" I smiled. "Lucky guess. What else would someone use? A hammer would be too small, a crowbar too obvious. Baseball bat's the classic choice for car vandalism." Ray made a note. "Eric says you might have reason to be angry with him." "Really? What reason would that be?" "He didn't say specifically." "Huh. Well, I can't think of any reason I'd be angry with someone I've never had a conversation with." I leaned forward. "Ray, between you and me, is this really about a broken windshield? Because it seems like a lot of effort for what's probably a $500 insurance claim." He closed his notepad. "Eric Valente's uncle has some influence in this town." Ah, now it made sense. "Well, I hope you find whoever did it. Vandalism's a real problem these days." I left the police station and drove straight to Valente Auto Spa. It was open for business, and Eric was in the lot, supervising the installation of a new windshield on his Mustang. He looked up as I parked, his face darkening with recognition. Eric Valente was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", artificially tanned, wearing a tight black t-shirt that showed off his gym-sculpted physique. He had the kind of rugged good looks that appealed to women who watched too many action movies, complete with designer stubble and perfectly styled hair. "You've got some balls showing up here," he said, walking over to my car. I got out slowly, keeping my hands visible. "I heard about your windshield. Terrible thing. Cut the act. I know it was you." "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" He stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. "I don't need proof. I know."
200 messages, deleted photos, a folder called Don't Open.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
"You know what, Eric?" I kept my voice calm, reasonable. "I know something, too." "Yeah? What's that?" "I know my wife's been spending her evenings here instead of at home with her husband." I smiled. "Funny how these things work out." His face flushed red. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? Tuesday night, 11 p.m. to 1:15 a.m., Wednesday, 9:30 to 1 a.m., Thursday, shut up. Should I continue?" Eric's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. Instead, he stepped back, trying to regain his composure. "Your wife came to me," he said. "She was unhappy, needed someone to talk to." "I'm sure that's all you did. Talk." "That's right. In your office, with the lights off, until 2 in the morning. His jaw tightened. "Like I said, she needed someone to listen." "Well, Eric, I appreciate you being there for Danny during this difficult time. It shows real character." I got back in my car. "Oh, and I hope your insurance covers the windshield. These days, you never know what your policy might exclude." I drove away, watching him in my rearview mirror. He stood in the parking lot, fists still clenched, probably wondering how much I actually knew. The answer was, not enough yet. But that was about to change. That evening, I parked across the street from Valente Auto Spa and waited. At 9:45, Danny's Mercedes pulled into the lot. She got out, looked around nervously, then walked to the office door. Eric appeared, kissed her briefly, and led her inside. I took out my phone and started recording. They were careless, leaving the office blinds open. I couldn't see much detail from my position, but I could see enough. 2 figures embracing, sitting close together on what looked like a couch, Eric's hands in places they shouldn't be. I recorded for 20 minutes, then drove home. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Working late with a client. Don't wait up." I texted back, "No problem. Sleep well." Wednesday morning, I called Carly Morrison, Danny's best friend and business partner at Fit and Fabulous. Carly came from old Millbrook money. Her family had owned the lumber mill before it closed in the 80s, and she'd never quite gotten over the fact that she'd peaked in high school. "Alex," she said when she answered, "I've been wondering how you're doing. Danny's been so worried about you." "I'm sure she has. Listen, Carly, I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime. I could use a friend right now." There was a pause. "Of course. When were you thinking? How about this afternoon? That little place on Main Street?" "Perfect. 2 o'clock? See you there." Carly arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a sundress that was probably expensive but looked cheap on her. She'd always been attractive in a small-town way, but she'd never had Danny's natural elegance or confidence. "You look good," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I mean, considering everything you're going through? Thanks. I appreciate you meeting me." She ordered a latte with extra foam and 2 sugars. I stuck with black coffee. "So," she said, stirring her drink, "Danny says you've been acting strange lately. Disappearing, not returning calls." I needed some time to think. "About what?" I looked at her directly. "About whether my marriage is worth saving." Carly's eyes lit up with the kind of predatory interest that some women get when they smell relationship drama. "What do you mean?" "I think Danny's seeing someone else." "Oh, Alex, no, she wouldn't do that." "Wouldn't she?" "She loves you." "Does she?" I leaned forward. "Carly, we've known each other for years. You can be honest with me. Has Danny said anything about being unhappy?" She bit her lip, clearly torn between loyalty and gossip. Gossip won. She has mentioned feeling unappreciated lately. Unappreciated how? She says you don't pay attention to her anymore, that you're always working, always distracted. Carly reached across the table and touched my hand. But that doesn't mean she's cheating. What would it mean? Maybe she just needs to feel desired again, wanted. Her fingers traced across my knuckles. Some women need that validation, you know? I let her hand linger for a moment before gently pulling away. You're probably right. Alex, can I tell you something? Of course. I've always thought Danny didn't appreciate what she had. You're a good man. Loyal, honest, hardworking. She leaned closer. If I were married to you, I'd never take that for granted. That's kind of you to say. I mean it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If you ever need someone to talk to, someone who understands what you're going through, I'm here. I nodded, filing away this information for future use. I should probably get going. Wait, she grabbed my arm. There's something you should know. What? She looked around the coffee shop, then leaned closer. Danny and Eric, they've been planning something. My blood went cold, but I kept my expression neutral. What kind of something? I probably shouldn't say anything. Carly, please. I need to know. She took a deep breath. They're going to claim you've been abusive, emotionally abusive. Eric's been encouraging her to document everything. Your mood swings, the way you've been acting lately. They think if she can prove you're unstable, she can get the house in the divorce. I sat back, genuinely shocked. Not by their plan, I'd suspected something like this, but by the fact that Carly was telling me about it. Why are you warning me? Her cheeks flushed. Because it's not fair. You're not abusive, Alex. You're just hurt. She paused. And because Eric's been telling Danny things about you that aren't true. What kind of things? That you're dangerous. That you might hurt her if you find out about them. She shook her head. But I know you. You'd never hurt anyone. I reached into my pocket and activated the voice recording app on my phone. Carly, I need you to tell me everything they're planning. And she did. By Thursday morning, I had everything I needed. Carly's recorded confession detailing Danny and Eric's plan to frame me for emotional abuse. Video evidence of their affair. Financial records showing Eric's tax evasion. A little digging had revealed he'd been skimming cash payments and hiding income from the IRS. But I wasn't ready to play my hand yet. The best revenge I'd learned from years of investigating insurance fraud was the kind that destroyed someone's entire life, not just their current scheme. I called my lawyer, Patricia Chen, and made an appointment for Friday morning. Patricia was sharp, ruthless, and had helped me navigate several difficult insurance cases over the years. If anyone could help me turn Danny's plan against her, it was Patricia. Alex, she said as I entered her office, I heard you and Danny are having problems. That's an understatement. I sat down and pulled out my phone. I need you to listen to something. I played Carly's recording, watching Patricia's expression grow more serious with each revelation. Jesus, she said when it finished. Your wife and her boyfriend are planning to destroy you. Can they do it? Legally, I mean? Emotional abuse is hard to prove, but if they're documenting alleged incidents, creating a pattern, she shrugged. A sympathetic judge might buy it. What if I have evidence that their claims are false? What kind of evidence? I showed her the videos of Danny and Eric together, played more of Carly's recorded confession. Patricia listened intently, making notes. This is good, she said finally. Very good. But Alex, I have to ask, how did you obtain this evidence? The tracking device is legal. I co-own the car. The recordings were made in public, or with the consent of one party, me. The financial information on Eric came from public records. And the recording of Carly? She consented to meet with me. I didn't tell her I was recording, but New York is a one-party consent state. Patricia nodded. You've done your homework. 12 years as an insurance investigator. You learn things. All right, here's what we're going to do. She pulled out a legal pad. First, we're filing for divorce immediately, citing adultery. Second, we're requesting a restraining order against both Danny and Eric, claiming they've been harassing you and threatening your safety. can we prove harassment? Eric accused you of vandalism without evidence. Then had you questioned by police. That's harassment. She made another note. Third, we're going to quietly tip off the IRS about Eric's tax situation. Is that legal? Reporting suspected tax evasion? Perfectly legal. In fact, it's your civic duty. I smiled. What about Carly? What about her? She betrayed her best friend to warn me about their plan. That suggests she might be willing to testify on my behalf. Patricia raised an eyebrow. You think she'd do that? I think Carly Morrison has been in love with the idea of destroying Danny's perfect life since high school. This gives her the chance to do it legally. You're more devious than I gave you credit for. I prefer thorough. Friday afternoon, I drove to the town park where Millbrook was setting up for the annual Founders Festival. The festival was scheduled for the weekend, 2 days of craft booths, food vendors, and small-town politics. More importantly, it was where half the town would gather to see and be seen. I found Mrs. Glick walking her ancient poodle near the bandstand. Eleanor Glick was 83 years old and had lived in the same house on Elm Street for 60 years. She knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. Alex, she called out as I approached, I heard you and Danielle are having troubles. News travels fast, Mrs. Glick. Faster when people don't bother to be discreet about their affairs. She gave me a meaningful look. That girl's been parking her fancy car behind that auto shop 3 nights a week for months. Really? Really? And that Valente boy's been bragging about his special client to anyone who'll listen down at Murphy's Diner. She shook her head. No respect for the institution of marriage these days. I appreciate you telling me. Alex, dear, I've known you since you moved to Millbrook. You're a good man who deserves better than a cheating wife. She patted my arm. If you need someone to testify about what they've been up to, you just let me know. Thank you, Mrs. Glick. That means a lot. Saturday morning, the festival kicked off with the usual small-town fanfare. I walked through the crowd nodding to people I'd known for years, accepting their awkward condolences about my marriage with grace and dignity. At noon, I spotted Danny near the craft booths, talking animatedly with Eric. She was wearing a sundress that showed off her figure, playing the role of the innocent wife whose husband had abandoned her. Eric stood close beside her, one hand possessively on her lower back. I pulled out my phone and started recording as I approached them. Danny, I called out. I've been looking for you. She turned, her face going pale when she saw me. Alex, what are you doing here? It's the Founders Festival. I've been coming for 8 years. I nodded to Eric. Eric, how's the windshield? Fixed, no thanks to you, he said. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Are you accusing me of something? You know what you did. I looked around at the growing crowd of onlookers. Eric, I'm not sure what you're implying, but making false accusations in public could be considered slander. Danny stepped between us. Alex, please, can we talk privately? I don't think that's a good idea. My lawyer advised me not to have any private conversations with you until our legal situation is resolved. Legal situation? Her voice rose. What legal situation? I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. Divorce papers. You're being served. The crowd around us had grown larger, people pretending to browse craft booths while obviously listening to every word. Danny opened the envelope with shaking hands, her face growing paler as she read. Adultery? She said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You're accusing me of adultery? I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm stating facts supported by evidence. Eric stepped forward. You can't prove anything. Can I? I held up my phone. I have video of you two together. I have witness statements. I have financial records showing you've been evading taxes. I looked directly at him. I also have a recording of Carly Morrison explaining your plan to frame me for emotional abuse. The color drained from Eric's face. That's impossible. Is it? Carly was very thorough. She explained how you've been coaching Danny to document my alleged mood swings. How you planned to claim I was dangerous and unstable. I smiled. She also mentioned that you've been having an affair with her too. Danny spun to face Eric. What? That's not true, Eric said quickly. I pulled up another recording on my phone and hit play. Carly's voice came through clearly. Eric's been telling me he doesn't really love Danny, that she's just convenient until he can get his hands on her money. The crowd was openly staring now, and I could see people pulling out their own phones to record the drama. Danny looked like she might faint. "You bastard," she whispered to Eric. "Danny, let me explain." She slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed across the festival grounds, and someone in the crowd actually applauded. 8 years, she said, turning to me. I threw away 8 years of marriage for him? Actually, I said, you threw it away the first time you lied to me about where you were going. She started crying then, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no love. Just the cold satisfaction of a job well done. The restraining order takes effect immediately, I continued. You and Eric need to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times. The house is mine pending the divorce settlement, which shouldn't take long, given the evidence of your adultery. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Danny? The IRS will probably want to talk to you about Eric's business practices. As his girlfriend, you might want to get your own lawyer. I left them standing there in front of half the town, Eric looking panicked and Danny crying into her hands. It should have felt like victory, but it just